Okay, Ag Science, we took 2 weeks off. One for spring break, and one because we had a lot going on in the greenhouse, and their time was really crunched because guess what? There weren't as many hands to go around. So we're back in class today, and today we're going to start talking about EPDs in cattle. Now, the basis of our discussion and what we've been leading up to is genetics and how genetics are passed and why genetics are important. And we'll touch on that as we go throughout this. And we're going to do this over several videos this week. But we want to start out talking about EPDs. I've got this pulled up here under Virginia's extension website. And they've got a great article here over understanding what EPDs are. EPD stands for expected progeny differences. So what we're talking about is we're putting a number on what an animal's offspring should theoretically do. Now this goes back several years and is based on a lot of data. So if you guys are number crunchers, maybe you think you want to become an accountant one day, EPDs are an awesome place to get your start and to learn how those genetics can go to work in your beef cattle herd. Now these beef cattle EPDs are going to be used as a breeding tool. And I want you to understand that from the get-go. They are a tool. Now, there's a difference between EPDs and actuals. Actual data on an animal would be like this animal weighs 1,200 pounds. Okay, that's its actual performance data. Now, if we're talking about the EPDs, we're assigning a number again for that animal based on what its offspring or progeny should do. So if we're selecting a bull, we're going to look at EPDs on that bull relative to what that bull's offspring or progeny should do. So if we were to look at humans, this would be like your parents would have a certain EPD number, and that EPD would be in relation to what you should do physically in performance. Now, those EPDs can go for a wide range of things. In fact, if you look at the Angus breed, I think they're probably the one that has the most EPDs. Those EPDs are strung out over a lot of different traits. But if we just carry it back to the basics and look at some things that you're going to find pretty much on most every breed that we talked about, you're going to find them here in these 6 or so basic EPDs. And what we want to start out is to compare two bulls just to show you how you use these for your benefit. So let's just start off by category first. In the first category, we have the birth weight EPD, or the birth weight expected progeny difference. So what this means is this number is calculated based on what bulls in this breed that we're talking about, so let's just say we're using Angus, what these bulls' offspring should be like relative to other Angus bulls in the breed at the time. Okay, so again, if we go back to humans, we're talking about maybe it's comparing boy babies that were born at Murray Regional Hospital in the year 2020 and comparing them and the data we've got from all of their parents and grandparents to try to determine what their kids are going to be like, okay, and those traits. So this is birth weight. So quick question, how big were you when you were born? If you don't know, maybe you should ask your parents or a relative to figure out. So birth weight is going to be a big deal. Why? Well, really it comes down to two things. Number one, I don't want to be out with my cows all hours of the night trying to pull a calf. Now, if I have to in an emergency situation, then that's my responsibility. But I don't want to try to do that just by simply because I don't have anything else to do. I want to do it if I need to, but we want to keep those calves in a good range relative to that breed. Now, I want them to be big enough, however. If they start out too small, then guess what? Then their growth curve starts a lot lower, and they have a lot of catching up to do. And that may put extra stress on you, it may take extra money, may take extra time, and all those things considered, it may never happen. So, birth weight EPD, we're talking about relative to the entire breed, the Angus breed in our case, what we're talking about today, how these bulls' offspring are going to perform. So if we look at Bull A and Bull B, we see that Bull A has been given a number of +5. Now, you ask where that number came from. There are calculations to figure that out, but let's just stick with the numbers for a second, not read too far into them yet. This Bull A has a +5 birth weight EPD. Bull B, excuse me, has a +1 birth weight EPD. So if we are to look at this, Bull A's calves at birth should on average weigh 4 more pounds than Bull B. Now that may not mean a whole lot, but if you really start to think about it, if we're talking about a good sized jump like this, that could mean a lot of difference. Maybe not in the actual birthing part of it, but hey, that's 4 pounds that calf comes out with that Bull B's calf does not on average. So we're going to work across this as we go throughout this week. We're going to talk a little bit more about these. But again, your homework assignment for tonight is to figure out how much you weighed at birth and then figure out as many relatives as you can find and figure out how much they weighed at birth. And maybe that starts to shed a little light on why you were the size you were when you were born. And also take into account that you have a father and a mother. And so both of those people and their genetics comes into account when it comes to making you. So the same thing happens here. We may have a bull with a really high number in one category. If bred to a cow with a really low number, by the law of averages, we may see something kind of in the middle. Again, we'll pick back up on this tomorrow and we'll see you then.